Welcome to the live guitar hangout. It's been a while. Really happy to be back. For those who are tuning in later, welcome. I'm Lee Anderson. I'm the host of the Play Guitar Podcast and Play Guitar Academy and all of those kind of things. So we're just going to spend some time this afternoon just hanging out a little bit. I'm finally in my new place and able to get a minute or two to hang out with you guys today. What I'd like to do as we go through the next, 10, 15 minutes, is go through some of not the last podcast. Last podcast, we were talking about kind of what's been going on with me and the community. But the one before that, we were talking about chords and scales and how they work. So I thought I'd take some questions about that. Since that was an audio podcast, some of those things, better for visuals, right? So we're going to go through some of that, checking. And there's been a lot of stuff to catch up on. So it's been a little while since we've done this. Let's see what's happened. Eddie Van Halen's passed away since we've had a live stream. We could talk about that a little bit. We could talk about how you guys are doing in the different areas and do a little catching up. Let's do it. Let's see who's in here right now. So Dean's here. Hey, Dean. How's it going, man? Hope everything's going good. It's good to see you. I have been, even though on the live streams we haven't done this in a while, I have been doing coaching. So I have been in contact with Dean a little bit right there, but good to see you. Chris is here. Hello, Chris. How are you doing? Hope everything's good today for you. Hope you're staying warm. David's here. Hey, David. Hey, he says, hey, Lee, I missed you. Hope you're doing well and settled into the new home. I'm functional. We're settled. We're here. There's always something new to do. Always something new. Every day's good. Today, though, Sunday, I guess not a whole lot of extra stuff to do. I found some time today, and I thought this would be fun. And we're going to see over the next couple weeks, I'm going to ramp these up slowly. So I have hoping to have a few during the week this week, and then the following week maybe do a little bit more and kind of ease back into it right there. So let's take a look here at the kind of schedule that I'm working on now for today. We're going to talk about how chord shapes and scales relate. And if you've seen, I have all of the podcasts now are into sections, so you can easily go into each section and pick out the things that you like if you want to, or listen the whole way through. And each section, I thought we'd expound on it a little bit. We got some more folks in here. Morsme says, hey, how you doing? Hi, how you doing? Brennan's here. Hey, Brennan, good to see you. Good to see you. And let's see here. We have Facebook user. Let's see. Let me head over to Facebook and see who that is. That's the odd thing about Facebook and StreamYard, which is what I'm using now, that you have to allow them to use your name on there. So let me head on over to, let's see if it's in the group or in, let's check the group first. It's Carol. Hey, Carol, how you doing? Good to see you. Wonderful to see you there. That's awesome. Yeah, we're in Florida now. We made the move. Everything's official now, and so ramping everything back up now. It's been a tough move. Mostly after the move happened. That was when everything was tough. The highlight of it is the furniture that we ordered was lost at sea. Right. So we had to order other furniture, and so furniture isn't coming in on time. Just junk that happens when you move into a new place. So, but great to see you, Carol. And we're going to talk about, let's see, Evan's over here too. Now let's see, I'm going to reply to Evan right now. There we go. Maybe we'll get Evan over in here too. So let's talk about chords and scales for a while, and then we'll have some fun and do some other stuff. So chords and scales relate. In fact, let's take a C major chord, C major scale. Let me get the David asks, are we best to chat on Facebook or YouTube? Either way is fine. But what'll happen is I'll see everything and I can respond to everything. But what you'll see is only the people who are on Facebook in your chat. And you won't see the people who are on YouTube. Right now, I'm streaming to my Academy Facebook page, the Play Guitar Facebook group, and then the YouTube. So whichever one. Let's see. We've got Dean on YouTube, Morsami on YouTube, and everybody else was on Facebook. So it's up to you. I'd say YouTube. YouTube probably would make it easy, but whatever you want to do is fine with me. So let's see here. So we got a C major scale. This is pattern 5. And here's our C major triad. It's an A shape if you're one of those caged type folks. And on the A shape, we have our C, G, C, E, and G. So first, fifth, octave, third, fifth. So we have a different sequence of strong notes and weak notes. So if we're playing over C, I'm going to get a loop right here going. Let's get a... So if you're playing strong, weak, strong, kind of strong, weak, weaker, strong, right? And actually the last note, the 7th, called the leading tone a lot. And the reason it's called a leading tone, it leads you up. So you hear how it wants to go up there. So we've got our weak notes and our strong notes. Weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong. So it's really nice how the C major scale works out. It's almost all the way through strong, weak, strong, weak, strong. So you can use going from one to the next as a passing tone, right? And the last two. Now you can argue F is could be a stronger note, not when there's a C chord playing, and that's where I wanted to get to this section. So here's what in the podcast, what we talked about in this section. The first step to playing this way is to know how the chord shapes and scales relate. So let's see here. I just lost it right there. Here it goes, coming back. So you'd think it'd be easy to do basically just what I did. Use your C major scale and then play a C chord and everything works out perfect. And you get used to where the strong and the weak notes are. Problem is that you're not always playing this C chord in the key of C. Sometimes this might be the 5 chord in the key of F, or it might be the 4 chord in the key of G. And the strong notes and weak notes that you would play, and even the scale that you would play, would change. And a lot of people who had started playing with the cage system they get very confused about, well, it's a C chord, and this is, I'm playing over my A shape and I'll play the C major scale. It doesn't always work that way because the C functions differently in different chord progressions. So knowing the function of your chord, in this example in F, the C chord would be the 5 in F. So here's C major over the C. But what if we did that in F? So I've got an F, and here's my C chord if I played C major scale. Very, very, especially where the B sits, it wants to be a B flat. It doesn't fit because the C is not the strong note, it's the weak note. So in the key of, stop the thing. So now in the key of F, our C chord wants to have that B flat. What does that sound? That's a dominant sound. It's a 7th chord. Okay? So, and this came up from I was helping some people with some of these kind of problems several times lately. So you always have to have the idea of what the function of your chord is and then relate the scale to it. And so let's see here. It's not always the same scale as a chord. And let's see. I wanted to go through one more thing. Gives the impression as the shape is always the pattern. I like to want to mention things start to sound sour, right, between that B and B flat. And also, if you were used to playing in the C chord, the other problem that I'm seeing a lot of times, say we are playing in C major, and let's do a C to G, which is the 5th chord, the 5 chord of C, and then back to C. Let's try that. This was the other problem. Let's go to the 5 chord. So we got our strong and weak notes, right? Now, do you hear how terrible that was the second time I played it? So I'm playing C, E, and G. They all sound great. Now over the G7. Not so good. So what you'd have to do is find a whole new set of strong and weak notes. So I'm playing over C. I'm playing my C major scale. So it's strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong, right? But when the G7 comes around, here's our C7. Starts off weak, strong. It's terrible, right? So we have to find a whole new set of strong and weak notes. So I'm gonna play my G7th chord. I'm just gonna loop that one. Now let's work out which notes are weak and strong when it's in the key of C. There's our strong note of G. Weak note A. B is strong. C is weak. D is strong. E is weak. Now the F, because it's a 7th chord, that can be considered a strong note right there. That's in the arpeggio. Strong, and then very strong here. So we have strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, strong. So now this time when I put both chords back in together, here's the strong notes for C, C, A, G. Now we've got our new strong notes. Matches perfectly. C, E, G, C, E, G. Now we have G, B, D, G, B, D, and an F also in there. And you start to find some neat things there. So right there, in my G dominant arpeggio, the strong notes we found that work over the G. Now remember, these are all in one scale. We're just accenting different ones. The F in that arpeggio is 1/2 step away from the third of the C chord. So that right there is a really nice resolution, right? You can almost hear the C come in when I play that one. Hear how nice it sounds? It's like that third vocal harmony that you hear all the time. It sounds really, really pretty there. So that, you know, when you go from a 7th chord back to a 1 chord, even though you're using the same scale, that F over the 7th chord resolve into E sounds really nice. The whole point of this being that that just learning the scales and just learning the chords is only going to get you so far. At some point you have to realize that even though we all start playing in the key. Okay, well, C major, we'll play in the key of C. All the chords are in the key of C, and C major should work over everything. And it does work, but it doesn't work well. You're really going to have to pay attention to what chord is playing at the time, because every time the chord changes, the series of which note's strong and which note's weak changes. And that's where you start to really start to sound pro. You know, you start to really sound like you're paying attention to the harmony of the song. Okay, so that's what I wanted to go through today. That was just one section of the podcast that I thought would be served better live, you know, with the camera. Hope I had the guitar up well enough. So that being said, that was the title. Let's hang out. There's some people I wanted to catch up with here. So let's see here. Coke's here. Hey, man. Boys are back in theory. Right. Just a little bit. A little bit of theory doesn't hurt. And Chris says, well explained, Lee. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. It's a tough hurdle. And the instances that I'm working on this is people who have been practicing the scales, but when it comes to improv, and that's why we practice improv every week, when it comes to being creative with them, there's a disconnect. You know, well, I'm playing in C and I'm playing C major scale, this should work, but there's the next step to it, and the big next step is you're not playing to the key, you're really playing to whatever's. It's all about matching. You know, if the note you're playing doesn't match what's the chord that's playing underneath it at the exact same time, it's going to clash. Doesn't matter if it's in the same key or not. You know, it's all a bunch of strong notes and weak notes. You know, people talk about playing outside, you know, playing notes that are outside the scale. There's enough tension inside the scale pattern to last you a long time. Playing in, you know, in the scale can get you really far, and you can use a lot of tension into that too. So, okay. So thank you, Chris. And let's see here. David's here. Hey, David, how you doing? I just saw your videos. I just went through everyone's videos before went live here. And actually, I was going to try. I brought my my Marshall Vintage Modern in. I was going to try to, and I plugged it in through my. I've got a small speaker box. I was going to use that today, but there was a lot of hiss coming through it. So that was one thing I hadn't bargained on. So I may have to figure out some sort of maybe I'll run it clean with pedals. Maybe that's how I'll do it. So I'll do that for next time during this week. We're gonna start doing some gear stuff every day. We're gonna do some gear. I'm laying down some tracks, putting some chords down, and going through my pedals, man. I hadn't played my gear in so long. I thought I'd share it with everybody. So let me go back through here. Coke says, the crew. That's right, man. We're back. I'm finally back. And I appreciate that you guys giving me the time off. Really, sometimes you gotta, put your family first, and it was time well spent. So we're all good here. The house is awesome. Weather's fantastic. Different, though. Very different. And I only lived 5 hours away from here. 6 if there's a lot of traffic. But it's completely different. It's taking a minute to get in. DC's here. Hey, DC, how you doing? It's great to see you. Great to see you. How you doing? Hope you're feeling good. Hope everything's going good for you. Let's see here. So we're going down here. Chris says, I think key signatures. It's like the song is in this key, so let's go. But like you say, the strong and weak notes change. Right. I think that's the biggest step from someone saying that every time I play, it sounds like I'm running scales, which we all have felt. Or every time I play over these chords, it just sounds aimless, or I don't have really good ideas. Good ideas play weak notes off of strong notes. If you analyze your favorite melodies, which is something that everybody should do. If you've got a favorite song, I don't care if it's from a soundtrack, or it could be any kind of music. It doesn't have to be rock or blues, any kind of music. It could be Star Wars music, And if you could figure that out on the guitar and figure out the chords behind it, you'll know that the payoff in those melodies are the strong notes, and what sets them up are the weak notes, and even notes so weak that they may be out of the scale. Depends on the degree of tension that you're wanting to do. But in the major scale, there's a few things you got to understand. You have to know the scale. You have to know the chords that go along with it. But then you have to marry the chords and the scales together, and that's the next step up. And there's a lot of us that are ready to take that next step up, to really start making some really nice melodic lines. So let's see here. Joe's here. Hey, Joe, how you doing, man? Hope you're doing good. Hope you guys didn't lose power or anything over there. Same with you, David. I hope everything went good. We just got rain and wind. Didn't lose power here. So I hope, everything was okay for you guys through the weather last weekend. Dean says, I think you're talking about my coaching lesson. Your advice really helped today. Well, I'm glad my advice helped, but it is a little bit yours, but several others too. It's been over the past month. This is one thing that, which is really nice about having the coaching and then having the podcast too, is it's a nice, almost like a focus group. If people in coaching are having those problems, I'm sure other people are having those problems too. And so I kind of it was 2 weeks ago. I kind of called it like that. I said that this is something that I know I know specifically people who could benefit from this, and I'll bet others could too. So that was cool. Okay, let's see here. Chris says, here's a question. If your chords get more complex, ninths, 11ths, 13ths, does this give more options in terms of scales or modes? Yes. So and for those of you who aren't familiar with for extended chords that have extensions, let me see here. Let me see if I can get a page to show up here. All right, so let's say, let me see if I can share that tab. Okay, let's make that bigger. Well, maybe that'll be here. Let me see if I can. There we go. That'll be bigger. Okay, so if we had C, which would be 1, D would be 2. This is in the C major scale. I like to use that. E, 3, F is the 4th, G is the 5th, A is the 6th, B is the 7th. Okay, and when we build a chord, right, we have C, our first, our third, and our fifth. Let me see if I can get that even bigger. Okay, and this is the first chord that you have. This is your triad, right? So 3 notes, C, E, and G. And if you take your regular old C major chord and figure out all the notes, we got C, E, G, C, and E. So there's doubles in there. Even though this is a 5-string chord, it's really a 3-note chord, right? So we've got 3 notes in that. Then the next chord that you'd build would be a 7th chord. And a 7th chord, it has 4 notes in it. Why is it called a 7th? Because we add the 7th degree of the scale into that, right? So we have the 1st, 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. Okay? So what we've done, so this is a C major chord, C, E, G, B. I take my first finger of the doubled root, lift that up. That gives me C, E, G, B, and then a double for the E, right? So these are our basic chords, triads and seventh chords. These are the things that most of the music that we listen to is built off of. But then we've got some things that get a little bit more complicated. You hear some chords that once you know your triads and your 7th chords, you think you got it all. And then you start to hear some stuff. Your ear starts to develop and you go, that person's playing a chord that I don't know how to play. What is that? What is that sound? I want to know what that sound is. So what happens is we take this idea of jumping every other note and we continue it into the next octave, right? So the next would be C, which is 8. Let me get this bold off of there. Okay. Then instead of starting over again, we continue with the numbers as well. So this is our second octave. C is 8, D is 9, right? E would be 10, F would be 11, G would be 12, A would be 13th, B would be 14th. Okay? So let me see if I can get these all on this. There we go. All in a line. So we're going to continue this idea. So we stopped at 7th. Well, if we want to make this an even more complex chord, we can add another note. Let's jump 1 and add a D to it. So now we have C, E, G, B, and D. We have a 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, flat 7th, and then the 9th. Okay, so this chord right here is a C major 9. We've added a D to it. Now, the farther we get away from these earlier chord tones, the less functional it becomes. You have to have some, you can get rid of some chord tones and imply a chord. But first, third, fifth, and seventh, that's your functional notes. The way those notes are set, you may have a flat seventh, a sharp seventh. Those are your functional notes. As we get into these next jumps, these are more decorative notes. They don't change the way the chord functions. So let's see here. Let's do a let's see. I want to put a seventh in that. Where's a good C major 9? Let's see here. There we go. Okay, so what I've done, I've got a C, an E, a B now. I left the G out. You can leave the 5 out. That's the first note if you're going to leave one out. And added a D on the top. C, E, B, and D. So this is still the same as a C major 7th chord, but this 9 note in there adds a certain color to it that sounds really, really nice. Okay? We keep going from there. So that's a major 9 chord. And if it was a dominant 9 chord, you'd have a flat 7th there instead of a major 7th. This is a B, not a flat for that one. Skip again, you get your 11th, right? So if you had a chord that was C, E, G, B, D, F, you'd have a major 11th, and then your 13th. You can keep adding those notes. At this point, when you get to the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th, let's see what notes we have. We have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. That's all of the notes in the scale by jumping. So you could make a chord with all of the notes in the scale up to the 13th right there. Pretty neat. And then you could leave certain, like you can always leave the 5th out if you're trying to build a chord. 5th can always go. It's the first one to go. But I just always thought that was cool. As you keep jumping, at some point you're going to hit all of the notes because you're repeating in octaves. And it only goes up to this. And these are the decorations notes, the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th. And you can do things to them. You can flat them. You can sharp them. You can use them minor. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do. But they don't change the function of these first 4 notes. These are your functional notes. And these are your decorative notes. This is where you start getting some really fancy chords. So that's, does it give you more options in terms of scales or modes? This I'm doing straight from the scale. But once you start making alterations to these, to the 9th especially, you can start using a whole bunch of different diminished and all these different types of scales that fit over different ways. It gets a little bit more complicated, but the thinking about it is this, which is so easy. We're just skipping every other note for our chord tones. And the farther we do that, the farther away it gets from strong notes. They get weaker and weaker and weaker, but they give really cool sounds. Okay? Yeah, so that, Chris, I hope it answered your question. Okay, so let's see here. Let me back on out of there. Just as we got lucky in the pan, yeah, we got the shamrock going on there. Yeah, you got lucky. That's right. It kind of scooted between. I think it went between you and David, right through there. Let's see here. David says, A lot of rain and wind in Tampa, but no real damage. That's got no real damage. That's great because it was when you looked at the I guess it was the rain chart. It was like it outlined that whole area. So I'm glad that what didn't get too bad. Chris says, "Cheers." Thank you, Chris. Thank you. So here's David. Here's a question relating to soloing over chords, Lee. If you're playing over progressions, you play the root, natural minor scale, or shift between the chords as they move, if that makes sense. Do I play the root and natural? I'm playing over a progression. Okay, let me see if I get this. Do you play the root, natural minor scale, or shift between the chords as they move, if that makes sense? Are you saying am I switching scales between chords? So I'm guessing you said root, natural, minor. So we're thinking about something in minor, right? A chord progression in minor. And am I shifting? Do I play that scale or do I shift between the chords as they move? If that makes sense. Well, and this is something that Chris and Evan did on the last level. They've moved on to a new level that we're actually all putting together as we go through. And this is, let's take let me get rid of this here. So if you're playing, let's say let's say A minor, and then goes to the 4 chord in minor, which would be the D minor, and then the 5 chord in minor, which would be an E minor, back to A minor. That's a pretty typical diatonic pattern, which means that these chords come directly from the natural minor scale. So if I played that, let me loop a little bit of that. I missed the loop. Let me do it again. Okay, so now I know that each one of these chords comes from the scale. So I could play this scale up and down all day long. That's the first step. The second step is, well, what are the chords playing? I'm going to highlight the roots of the chords as they go along. So that's the next step. So basically I'm thinking chord to chord to chord. Now we start to come into extenuating circumstances. So at this point, all I've done is I played diatonic. I'm playing straight from the scale. And then the next is I'm targeting notes of the chords as they go. So I'm shifting my strong and weak notes to those chords. The next step is when you start to get in positions where things don't work out quite perfectly. So if you saw what I just did, I did a minor and a minor and a minor. The 5 to 1, right? Well, this sound of a minor, which is in the natural minor, that's how it is in the scale, isn't the strongest sound to a lot of people. A lot of people love the sound of a dominant chord as a 5 to a 1. This is something that I went over with Chris lately, and there's a ton of songs. A lot of Santana styles, a lot, even in blues, like Thrill Is Gone has that, where the 5 chord in the minor. So most people ignore it. They just play natural minor. And in the natural minor, the 7th is a G. But let's see what we did when we changed this E minor to an E 7th chord. Okay? So instead of E minor, we take this G and raise it up one to a G sharp. Okay? And then we also have the 7th in there, which is a D. Okay? So we have a D all of a sudden becomes a strong note, and our G, if we were to match the chord perfectly, would go up to G sharp. So watch this now. Let's see if here, let me record this. You hear that? Just on that chord, I changed my G note to a G sharp. Hit the G. Try it again. Here's the root, the 7th. So what I effectively did for that chord, I'm playing harmonic minor. Then when the next chord comes back in, I switch back to my natural minor. So that's another way of where I would start to, in the hierarchy of this, I would start to think, okay, I'm going to start changing my scales. And now you can do that. A lot of these, especially with pentatonics, you'll hear that a lot. You hear this a whole lot where you play, let's see, this is an A. You're an A minor pentatonic, D minor, E minor. So sometimes people will just force that to make that chord sound like it's a key change, right? So you can do that. Then you can, when you start to play a little bit more outside, you would start to especially in blues, sometimes you go to a 4 chord, they'll switch to a diminished scale. That adds a little bit of tension to that. And actually on any note, on any chord of the blues, of a 12-bar blues, you could switch to it, add tension in and out there. But yeah, so the answer to your question after 5 minutes of doing this is that typically you'll stay in the key, but then you'll have, you'll start to target chords after that. And then the next level that you move up to is you'll start to, on places where you have a special chord, you'll outline that chord. You'll change just for that chord. And then after that, you start adding a lot of tension in by going outside, using more tense scales, and using them in specific places in the chord. So it just really depends 99% of music that we listen to, popular music, does the first two, plays to the key and plays to the chord. And then the rest of it, as you start getting fancier and fancier with music, the more and more that you use that. But it's good practice. Even if it's a simple song, you can still use these ideas. Okay, so let's go. Let's see here. And Chris says, that was a great lesson. Enjoyed learning that. Yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed going through that. It takes a little time to get your brain to get into it, but it's good for the ear too. Yes, it especially gets your ear right to where you start to listen for those things that are different than the regular. You start to think, I'm playing this song, where can I add something cool like that? Where's a tasteful place to add those things in? So that there's some ideas. And David says, great, thanks, Lee. I'm glad. I hope I helped. You don't have to do any of it, but as you move along, you'll find yourself playing and switching scales for chords farther on down the road. But that may not always be the case. If you're playing a Bob Dylan song, you may not want to do that. It calls for that sound of like a major pentatonic, or in fact, actually, when I saw Bob Dylan play, I saw him at it was University of Delaware basketball arena. I saw him play, and the players that he had playing with him, they might as well have been like bluegrass players. They were all over the place, playing some really cool stuff over songs where you're traditionally used to hearing the basic scale, being played over them too. So it can be fun. It can be fun. Okay, everybody. It is, let's see here, 5:47. This is fun. I'm glad we're able to do this again. It's great to see so many familiar faces. If you guys have any questions, now's the time to start getting them in there. Let's see here. David says, I just find playing the usual minor pentatonic over the root of the progression is what most people do and can get a bit boring. Yeah, and but you have this trade-off, right? So sometimes I start to think like that. I start to think, well, yeah, I've heard this a million times. But then you hear someone play the minor pentatonic scale in a way that you've never heard it before, and it makes it all new again. It's really how you come at it. You can play very simple things, very interesting. But I know for myself, at some point, I'm ready to do some other stuff, So I completely understand how you're feeling, but I feel that way too. But then somebody will come along. It hasn't happened actually in a long time. I really haven't heard a lot of music that I'm really floored by in years. I would love to be something that I feel that the music that I listened to growing up, it took it to the next level. A lot of the music that I listen to now, it feels like it just backed off. It's like, I'm just going to stop there with that. But every once in a while, I hear, I talked about them a bunch. The last people that really blew me away was that Rodrigo y Gabriela. That really, to me, took some sounds. Metallica is basically what it is, but wrapped it in more of a flamenco type style, which, I'd heard little bits and pieces of that actually from Metallica. They'll put a little bit of in there. It's just kind of like some ear candy on a song. But to have two players just, sounding that full, to me, that was the last time I was really, really blown away by something. That's been a few years. So I'm ready for something new. You got any good music? Let me know. So let's see. And Gilmour does it well. Yeah. And it's melody. David Gilmour is a master of melody. A master, And he can take very easy, basic things and do bends and build. And, you know, he reminds me, it's not the same music at all, but of like John Williams. The melodies that he makes hit you. They translate to the human experience, and they're from the same notes that everybody else is playing. So, okay, everybody, if you don't have any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and start to wrap it up. This has been a fun Sunday afternoon for me, late afternoon. Got dark while we were here. And hopefully throughout the week, I may have another one or two. Like I said, I'm going to start slow and work my way into this. Don't want to burn myself out too fast, but this was a lot of fun, and I've been missing spending time with everybody. And I hope that my answers to your questions helped. And I will see you later on in the week. Tonight, I've gone through all of the coaching videos that came in and prepared for that. So later on this evening, I'll record all the videos, and so you'll have them by tomorrow morning. I'll probably get to them later this evening. So, all right, everybody, I will see you soon. Thanks for hanging out. Bye-bye.